The relinquishment of the birth parents' rights is pretty much different in every state. They all have their laws specifically as to how it's done. But I'm not aware of any state that allows the birth mother to give her consent prior to the adoption of the child. States do differ for the birth father. They allow the birth father, some states allow the birth father to take and give his consent prior to the birth. But as for the birth mother, really in an independent, private, direct placement adoption, whatever you want to call it, that type of consent of the birth mother is done either before a court or by somebody who's appointed by a court to take a relinquishment. It could be done by an agency as well, typically under the laws. But typically in these independent adoptions, we're having a court appoint somebody to go into the hospital and take that consent.
And usually it's somebody who's done these before. That's what you want, somebody that's either a social worker or an attorney that's done a lot of adoptions so they can be sensitive to the issues that we're working through. I know what I like to do, especially in the independent, well, I guess this is the case with the agency adoptions, is I'll go in, usually I'll have some kind of contact with the expectant parent beforehand to find out when they want to do it, where they want to do it. Sometimes they want to do it in the hospital right before they get discharged. Sometimes they want to do it after they've been discharged. They want to do it at home or a friend's home. I've done them all over the place. But I think what I try to do first is to read through the document together with them. Make sure and answer any questions that I can answer. And I say, I'm not an attorney. So hopefully, I mean, most of the time the attorneys have already given the expectant parents a copy of it way in advance. Maybe not way in advance, but give them some time to be able to look through it. And so I answer any questions. I make sure they understand words. You guys sometimes will use interesting words that maybe
we try to keep them simple.
but just make sure, do you understand what irrevocable means? Do you understand, those kind of things, and just kind of walk them through, make sure that they feel comfortable. And I always say, you don't have to do this. And I'm not trying to talk them out of it.
No.
I just want to make sure I don't want to be involved in an involuntary relinquishment. I want to make sure this is their choice and they're doing this in the best interest of their child because they want to. And so it's a really emotional time. Birth parents react differently. Some are very stoic and they just get through it, and they, some laugh a lot. I mean, sometimes when we're nervous or scared or whatever, we laugh a lot. And then I've seen a lot of tears. It's a difficult thing to do. And you sign on that dotted line, and sometimes we make them sign several times because we need to have extra copies and things. And it's a hard thing to do. But that legal document will tell them exactly what they're doing and how they're working through it. What is it like? Sometimes most of the time you're not there. What is it like to sit there and kind of, because usually you know when it's happening.
Right. With us, both our son and our daughter, we read through all of the documents beforehand, like a couple weeks beforehand, just so we kind of knew. And then we read through what she would be signing. And so we were aware, and we knew about the time she was signing, and we were waiting both times downstairs in the hospital. And just to know what they were going through, you know what I mean? Your heart's breaking for them, and it's hard and it's full of emotion. And then they come out and they brought us the papers that she's just signed, and you're thinking, wow, this is really all happening. And then after things were signed is when placement was for us. And with our son, she wanted to be alone with us. And so we walked in and she was just standing there holding him, and you're at a loss for words, And my husband said, we're going to do everything that we can to be the best parents that we can and to make sure that he can return back to Heavenly Father. And she said, I know you will. She placed him in my arms, and she was out the door, and it was just, I don't know, it was so so full of emotion. We just both just sat there crying, and so grateful, yet I just want to bust out the door and go give her a hug. It's so hard. This person that you've grown so close to and love so much, and yet you're so grateful, and you've got this little new one, and it's hard. It's just,
I think it's
such
the
an amazing
definition
experience.
of
but
bittersweet. I mean, you talked about it earlier in another video, you know. It's bittersweet because you love this child and you love this mother, and you just, it's so bittersweet.
Having open adoptions has really opened the door for a whole different experience.
Right.
I think adoptions of the past, that a lot of adoptive families didn't know a whole lot about birth families or birth parents beforehand. And I mean, I've heard stories of being in the hospital and the baby just comes in and they never even see the birth family. With my daughter's birth mom, we had a lot of time to become close, and she's my same age. We have a lot of same interests. We are like sisters. I mean, we really got that close. So here we are at Relinquishment, and I am the benefactor of this heartbreak for someone that is like my sister. How could I not mourn that with her? It is very bittersweet, because here we are, getting this beautiful baby that we've worked so hard for and longed for, but now I'm all of a sudden seeing this heartbreak and pain on my sister's face. That's how she is to me. That was something that you really can't prepare yourself for. It's really a lot of contradictory emotions, and but at the same time, I love that adoption has changed to this. It makes it so much more meaningful. It makes it so much more love and emotion filled, which is not a bad thing. Emotion is hard, but it's not bad. It's bonding. And that's what bonds you to your children. That's what bonds you to this birth family. And in those bonding situations, your children will grow up in unsurmountable amounts of love. And who wouldn't want that? That's amazing.
I think having seen what's happening at placement, that you have the ability to appreciate what happened, and not seeing that, I think you are kind of robbed of the emotion and the understanding of how difficult it was, and that it was difficult and she still did it. I think the families who didn't see that, and it never had anything to do with the adoption process from the birth parent side, that's where a lot of the fear of, is she going to come back? Is she going to do this? You sit there and you watch this woman go through an incredible amount of pain and still do what she did. It testifies to you that she's doing it because she feels like it's the best thing. And you don't have to look back with that guilt of, did someone take this baby from her? Did someone force her to do this? You saw it. It was her choice. She did it, you know? And then you don't have those fears. You don't.
And that's interesting you bring that up, because remember, there's two different ways most states allow it to be done. And that is to be done at the hospital by somebody appointed by the court or an agency, or done before the court. And I've always felt like it's more humane to allow the consent to be taken out of court.
Out of court, yeah.
I have felt like that is the better way to do it. There are some judges who I've run into who have felt like they want those consents taken in court, because what they're so concerned about is that the birth parent is doing this freely and voluntarily, and that's what that person who takes the consent has to certify. Right. And it's cheaper to take those consents in court. Right. But I feel that really, honestly, the best way to do it is to do it in a comfortable setting and use the planning method to let the birth mother make those decisions. Yeah.
I think if you do it in court, if the judge forces you, or maybe we had our second child, his birth mother wanted to do it in court.
I've had that too.
You know, but there are I think there are ways to make sure that placement then goes smoothly and is humane. You know, there's whether you can find another room to actually do the placement of the child. Some courts have, in the courthouse that we go to a lot, there's some rooms right next to the court that are used for consultation, that you may want to go in there and things like that.
I think the point of it is to let the birth mom be in charge.
Let her be in charge.
Let her do it.
But also let her know, if she doesn't know what it's going to be like, to kind of explain to her, this is what the scene's going to look like. And so. And
when I take the consent of a birth parent or a birth mother in court, I'm always trying to keep it very on a personal level, because they are testifying. So we'll let them stay at the table, and we don't have them get on the witness stand. And I'll usually kind of try to start out with some more upbeat questions. Has anyone declared you to be mentally ill? That's usually one that causes them to chuckle a little bit. But I've even had some funny ones. I had one situation in which I said, it's always common. You'll say, is there anything that you're on currently that would prohibit your ability to think clearly and understand what's going on today? And I had a birth parent say yes. And I'm like, what? And,
that's something to think about. That's actually one of the things with relinquishment that sometimes they forget, especially if you're doing it in the hospital, is to make sure that there aren't any narcotics.
And the hospitals, and that's why the hospitals will come in and they'll do that pre-planning, and they'll usually say this is what our policy is. I've actually had hospitals call me and say, well, how long should I have her off meds? I'm like, I am not a doctor. I can tell you what I've heard, but I'm not a doctor. You'll need to talk with the doctor. Please don't call me. But again, it's I think the hospital setting's so much better, or hospital or another place. It doesn't necessarily need to be there. I think a lot of times the child, although, will be exchanged prior to that experience.
Can I say though, I have to finish this out with because we've talked about it being so bittersweet and driving away and you just want to cry your eyes out because it's like unreal that just happened. But I love open adoption because it enables you to see full circle. And sometimes that circle is a little bumpy. That first year especially, there's so many emotions, and I think it's really important for adoptive families to keep that in mind, that birth mom is grieving, and sometimes mistakes are made when people are grieving, and to let it happen and still just love. But I am now 4 years away from that relinquishment that I was just talking about. My daughter's 4 now. And I just love our open adoption. It is so fulfilling. I love to see their cute little relationship. I love that my daughter has a relationship with her birth mom that is so sweet, and that she will know her whole life how much she's loved. And I love to see the success in her birth mom's life. I love to see her life blossom and go forward. And we've reached this comfortable place where there's really no tension. It's more like the same way I would see my sister or an aunt or an extended family member. There's this really comfortable spot you can get to with open adoption, and it makes that pain of relinquishment heal. That's what heals it, is just that you get to see the joy come back into their lives. I love that.